Good morning, everyone out there in YouTube land. My name is Jared, and this is my channel, Mazda B3K. So in our last episode, we fixed the major issue with the truck behind me here, this flip truck, this 96 F250. It had a misfire. That's fixed, but still has some other problems. So in this episode, we're going to focus on what can we do to make this thing better and keep the cost under, say, $200. Without further ado, let's get started. All right, guys, so first thing we're going to do, since this one's a little harder to just hear, is let's check our engine codes and see what we have. Since this is OBD2 and it's 1996, we actually can get some pretty good data off of our reader. And it says that we have a TPS code, a P1120, throttle position sensor, A, out of range, low, ratch too low. So from driving this vehicle around, I've seen this code and one other TPS code come up. I'm thinking we have a bad TPS, but before we condemn it, we do need to do some basic stuff like check the wiring and make sure that nobody has monkeyed with the throttle stop screw, because that could cause TPS codes. And I'll explain why here in a second. So what is a TPS? That is a throttle position sensor, and what its job is to tell the computer where it thinks the throttle is, the throttle plate, which is inside of this. Where does it think it is? And that has big implications for shift points, where the transmission decides to shift, your power, acceleration, fuel economy. All of that can tie into where the computer thinks you've got your foot, basically. So if a TPS is going south on you, it's a big deal. It can cause all sorts of problems. Bucking, jerking, no power, hard shifts, no shifts. All of this can be TPS. So let's check it out. That throttle stop screw I mentioned before is this guy here. This is your throttle stop screw. And kind of makes sense. So here's the throttle, right? This is the cable that goes back in the firewall. See it jiggling down there? And that goes down to the pedal. So when you put your foot down, it pulls this cable, which works these springs, which inside, if I take this air intake tube off, you would see the throttle blade inside opening up. This is simulating full throttle. Put your foot on the floor. So wide open throttle. Now, when you're not doing that, what tells the throttle to stop, find its steady state when your foot's off, so say idle, is this screw. It literally is how far in or out this screw is. So it's very important that this screw is set correctly. And what will happen often is you'll get a good old boy who's used to working on carbureted engines, and they'll say, this idle's not right. I need to mess with the screw. And they'll find this screw. Thing is, this is set by the factory, and unless you're putting in go fast parts that change basic resting spots in your engine, you don't need to mess with this at all, ever. It stays right where it is. And what it should do is, with the TPS working correctly and this screw correct, you should be sitting at 20% throttle at idle. That's kind of the default. You should be at around 20%. So what we're going to have to do, and there's the other side of the screw, is we're going to have to get into the TPS, which is way down here. We have to take some stuff off to get there. This is the connector in my hand. The TPS itself is right here. It's this little black piece of plastic. It mounts to the bottom of the throttle body. And we're going to have to take the throttle body off to get to it and to do stuff. So we have couple different things we're going to have to pull, remove, shove out of the way, such as the IAC valve over here, and all that other sort of fun stuff to get to this, to remove it, so that we can actually take a look at what's going on here. And the good news is we can actually do what we need to do with this detached, because we're going to get a voltage reading off the sensor as we work this. And there's a voltage range we should be at when we're at rest. That's okay. And then there's an entire range that as we work this throttle, we should see on the TPS. If we don't see that, it's probably bad. So let's get into that. All right, first thing that needs to happen is the air intake needs to come off. So this is a worm clamp, 8mm. There are 2 of them. Again, they're both 8mm. Now I'm going to get in to see how much the company I bought this from, how well they took care of this stuff. Which I think they did a pretty decent job. We're going to find out. Oh. All right, better. Okay, that hasn't been off in a minute. Okay. So that comes off. You can see this is pretty old because it's shedding. Still serviceable, but old. All right, we're going to need to disconnect the IAC valve. At least it's electrical, which bring you up. That's right here, and its retainer is broken, so you just keep that right off. And we've got, I think this is a vacuum line. Yep. So that comes off. And the throttle is going to have to come off, which is just pops off like that. So that's easy. This is a, from looking at it, this is a coolant line. Comes up here, it goes to this little bobber up here, and then feeds into the overflow. So it should right now, because the engine's still relatively cold, I should just be able to take this off and it's not going to spill coolant. I would recommend that your radiator is not under pressure before you try to take that off, because otherwise it might spew on you a little bit. So that's going to be another 8 for this worm clamp. These are my kind of people. All worm clamps, all 8mm. I dig it. All right. Oh, no, it's got a little pressure on it. Let me see if I can relieve that pressure up here. Okay. There we go. A little bubbly, but we're okay because I didn't run the engine very long, so not much pressure built up. There we go. Spill a little bit of coolant, but not a lot of bit of coolant, which is good. All right, so bear in mind, if you haven't taken care of your coolant, this will rot off. It'll just, I mean, this one's rough, but it kind of makes sense. It's 30 years old. But this will rot off, so be aware of that. You may wind up breaking it. If your engine is piping hot, this is going to be under the full 16 pounds of pressure. Don't just blip and then pop it off like I did. I knew this wasn't very warm, so I could do that. You got to follow the instructions here. If you're under full pressure, you need to put your hands here, gently turn it until you start hearing it hiss, and then walk away until the hissing goes away and you get that pressure out. All right, looks like we have, oh, that's another coolant line, and that one might wind up peeing a bit, so it's another 8mm. This is a coolant line. It comes in over here to this riser off of the intake. Oh yeah, down there actually, I may go ahead and change out the thermostat in this guy, because that's right down there. But can I do it without removing the distributor? I sure hope I can. Anyway, getting a little squirreled here. So I'm gonna get this off. Hopefully it didn't spew too much. Might want to have some towels on hand for it. And that should mostly free up the throttle body so that I can just get at these bolts and take it off. Now the bolts, there's 4. So there's 1, 2, 3, and then the 4th one's buried down there, and it's kind of a pain to get to, but get those 4 off, and then this throttle body will come off, and then we can actually, you know, take a look at the TPS, and we can hopefully remove it. All right, so you may have noticed looks a little different. I swung the air intake out of the way just to have a little more room. And one other thing that I did is I disconnected the TPS down here. It's a push tab. So with that done, going to work on starting to take the throttle body itself off. I am leaving this coolant line alone for the moment. I'm going to see if I can work with it as is because it's stuck on there pretty good and the hose is already splitting and I don't feel like replacing it. Not right this very second. That one's loose. Switch to where I can push instead of pull. That one's loose. That one's loose. The radiator honked at me. I don't know how to feel about that. And that one's loose. So I'm going to go after the hard ones first here at the bottom. So that way when the whole assembly tries to come out, I'm just having to fight with bolts I can easily see and work with versus the ones that I can't. But that being said, once you get the air intake out of the way, access isn't that bad. I have had to work with worse, much worse. The RV behind me is evil incarnate. Not a fan. But I obligated myself to replace the 454 in it and the 4L80E transmission. So that's a thing. As you can see, this is starting to get wiggly. Got essentially 3 or 4 bolts out of it. All right. But I am curious to see what that coolant line's going to do. What I suspect might happen is if I flip this over too much, coolant's going to start coming out up here. And that'll be a bummer. Oh, come on. You don't need to do fastener things. Who needs a fastener to do fastener things? All right. Oh, almost. I can hear it. Here it goes. All right, last one. The one that's easy access, easy to see. Save it for last. Remember, the whole point of this is we're trying to get to the TPS. All right. Oh, I caught that. How lucky am I? Okay. So here we are. Ooh, a little oily. I guess we got some blow-by going on. See, so those are your throttle blades right there. And I don't know if I'll be able to mess with them now that I've gotten all this. There we go. See, you step on the gas, these open up, more air comes in, more zoom zoom, right? Let's see, those look okay. And this gasket stayed put, so that's good. I get to reuse it. And we did all that because mounted down here at the bottom is our TPS. It's held in with 2 Phillips screws. So we're going to get that out. We're going to see what's up with it. All right. So we're just going to Oh boy. Okay, good, it's turning. I don't know why on earth Ford said we're going to use bolts everywhere else on this assembly. But for your TPS? Nah, bro, we're going to use Phillips heads. I mean, they probably did it because they said, we want to make sure you don't over torque this. Which is understandable, but you know, there you go. That's Phillips. That's original. I wonder what that green stuff is. We're going to find out. Alright. Ow, that worm clamp is not pleasant on the fingers. Oh, wow. This one's a little... Here we go. Put my finger there so it can't run away. Alright. We has TPS. So, looking at it, wires look okay. I don't see any obvious nicks there on that side. Coming down to this side. Again, I don't see any obvious nicks or tears. Looking at the connector itself, I see 3 pins. We have 3 wires, so that lines up. None of the pins seem overly pushed back. It still has the internal retainer in place. That's what the red is. But when we look at the TPS itself, it definitely has some miles on it, that's for sure. But you see how it has a notch on either side? It actually sits a certain way on the throttle blades. And I can show you that. See, there's a metal stop here. And whatever that green fuzzy is just fell away. But there's a metal stop that the TPS actually hooks onto. So when you go to put it back on, you can't, don't be dumb and break it when you try to put it back on. Some people will do that. You don't want to force it because the TPS is only supposed to turn a certain amount. So actually, I should explain how this works. I'm sorry. The metal blade goes in there, and when you hit the gas and the throttle blade's open, that blade turns a collar inside the sensor, and that turns into an electric signal, a voltage signal that is sent to the engine computer, and then the engine computer can understand that voltage signal as a percentage of throttle being used. And from that, it makes a whole bunch of decisions about shifting and all that other stuff. That's how all that works. So what we're going to do is I'm going to go ahead and put the new one on, or a supposedly known good, and then I'm going to worry about checking throttle percentages and things like that, because if this guy's busted, we're not going to be able to get a good reading anyway. Okay, this is our new TPS. It is a DY-780-1X, otherwise known as F6TZ9B989AA. Fuzz fuzz. Good job, camera. And here it is. So here's what a new TPS looks like. And actually, when you look at those grooves look a little different. I wonder if this one got worn or something like that. But this is probably a revised part, a newer part. Made some design changes to it. Be my guess. But they look pretty similar. We have 3 wires. We have 3 wires. So, and looking at the connector style, that looks about right. So we'll go ahead and start trying to stick this guy on there. Like I said, as I showed you earlier, you got a blade down there, and this has to hook correctly on that blade. So you want to get it on there, and then before you try to screw everything back in, make sure it'll spin, right? And it's not going to bind or break. which would be poopy. So don't do that. So I'm going to take care of that. Let me see if I can move you around here a little bit. Yeah, that actually chilling out on the battery right now. So basically, we know we have to get these screw holes to line up. And we also know that this has to do the thing. So if I can feel it engaging and turning as I work the throttle. So the question is, can I get the screw holes to line up? And I'm thinking we can. I'm also thinking I may have this in upside down. No, I don't have it in upside down. Cool. Because if you put this in the wrong way, it, you know, no good. No. Yeah, I think that works. So I'm going to go ahead and get this screwed back in, and then we'll see what kind of voltage signal we're getting out of this thing when we're at rest. Okay, got those screws in. So what I'm going to do next is I'm going to fish this connector up, get these connected. All right, guys, we just need to put everything back that we took off. So I've got our 3/8 bolts back on now that everything's adjusted and good. Gonna put our vacuum line back on. It's kind of sneaking in right there. We have our coolant line that reaches over from the radiator. So I'm gonna wiggle that back on. Get it all the way down. Gonna loosen this clamp up a little bit. That clamp was kind of interfering. There we go. Then we'll go ahead and put this back on. All right, guys, so we got everything back together, and this does actually serve a purpose. This engine has an issue where the upper rad hose, actually they got clipped a bit before they did it. It'll groove and cut through upper rad hose if you don't keep this separated somehow, and that's what the zip tie is all about. So anyway, we got everything back in, got this back on, got our vacuum back in, all back together. Don't forget to put your actual throttle cable back on. Got the intake back together, stuff plugged in. So I guess we're going to go ahead and we're going to fire it back up. We'll rev it a couple of times, and we'll see if we have any more TPS codes. And then we can take it for a drive and see if it shifts properly, because that's the other issue I've been seeing with this one after fixing the misfires, is it doesn't want to shift when you give it the beans, or even when you don't give it the beans. So all right, let's give this a try. So I had to get out to some pavement, and the issue we were having before with the TPS being bad is throttle response wasn't good and shifts were horrendous. It didn't know when to shift. So right now we just shifted into second, no problems. Take it up to around 30. Okay, that shifted fine. Can't go too crazy on this road. We're still in a neighborhood. I don't have a nice little quiet piece of pavement nearby that I can rip up a vehicle. I need to find one. Alright, let's try this. Alright, so before, when it was trying to get into third, it just could not do it. Alright, there was third, no problem. So I would say that our TPS problem is fixed with the new TPS. truck's running real smooth. It's still acting a bit sluggard at idle, but that could be a completely blown out PCV valve. And the other thing that I just realized that I'd forgotten is there is an active vacuum leak on this truck from HVAC stuff that I haven't fixed yet. That's going to be another video. So we got a vacuum leak, which is going to cause us to run a little funny. And also pretty sure, based on what we're seeing out of the live data that I have, the thermostat is either missing or it is stuck open because we are not getting up to temp.
Currently about 140.
And by now we should be up to temp because I've given it the beans a couple of times and nothing. But I'm going to say that for the purposes of the TPS, we're good. So we're going to move on to the next thing, which is going to be replacing the thermostat. And we will do that. I'll bring you back for that once we get back home, because the thrust of this video is what all can we do on the cheap. I've bought about $150 worth of parts. And I want to see with those parts and what I have lying around the house, let's see what we can do to get this thing into a solid beginner truck for somebody. So the engine's about there. There's some other things that have to happen. The hood latch needs fiddling. The tailgate latch needs fiddling. Need to clean the bed out. Do some other small things. We'll see if we can't make this a good truck for somebody. All right, folks, moving on. TPS looks good. ICM is now good. Let's tackle that thermostat. So in an engine that's working correctly, what you should see is it's going to get up to 195, 200, 210, somewhere in that range. And then you're going to have a little dew flipper that looks like this, called a thermostat. It's going to open up. It's a valve, basically. And then that's going to let coolant leave the block, go into the radiator, get cooled off in the radiator, and then come back to the block and then begin to circulate so the engine doesn't overheat. And the reason why you even have the valve in the first place is because if its engine is too cool, it doesn't run quite right. You burn more gas, some other things happen. Now, obviously, you don't want it too hot because, you know, then things break. So you regulate it with a thermostat. Pretty comfortable that either this one is missing or stuck open, because no matter how much beans you give this thing, you really can't get it above 140, which is cool for an engine that's supposed to be up and running for an extended period of time. So we're going to get at it, which it should be located here in this water neck up at the front. So there's a line that goes down to the water pump, comes up here, and then you have the upper radiator hose that comes in here. And these got to be disconnected, and if you don't drain coolant first, you're going to get coolant all over the place. So we're going to drain coolant first. But to make sure we have access to all this, I did go ahead and take our air intake back off. As a reminder, that's just a couple of 8mm screws, or you can use flathead. Get that out of your way. And now I want to go to the bottom. Hopefully the radiator petcock is working so we can do a controlled drain into a pan. Okay guys, here's the petcock. Right now I'm over on the passenger side of the vehicle. So you're going to crack this thing open. When you crack it open enough, it's going to start to pee fluid. The fluid will then bounce off all this metal and go everywhere you don't want it to go. So you're going to want to have a large pan. This is an oil pan, so that way I can contain coolant and then safely dispose of it later, because I prefer not to get it in the ground. I'm next to one of the largest freshwater springs in the world, and I prefer to keep it fresh and not coolant fresh. So I'm going to get this pan in, and I'm going to drop not all the coolant, but some of the coolant to get the level low enough that whenever I go and pull the upper rad hose, that we're good, and that it doesn't pee a massive amount of coolant all over the place. This segment's talking about how we went to take out the bolt on the water neck there and it snapped due to rust. And then the other one right there, I think I talked about how it's, I think they're 1/2. I don't think they're 9/16. And how I couldn't get swing room because the air conditioner is in the way. So I'm going to take loose the 3 big accessory bolts to take the accessory bracket off to get more room for tooling in there. And to get access to any of it anyway, we had to take the belt off. Now I'm pointing at the tensioner. You have to get a 15mm on that and pull it off to the side so you can get the belt off. And then pointing out how the belt's modified. You can't trust the diagram. You have to use the custom diagram there because they've removed the smog pump, whoever the previous owners were. And not sure what I'm talking about here, but essentially laying out where I'm at and what we had to do. Oh, I see I already took the chunk off. But what I had to do to get the swing room so I could get some tooling in there to work on getting this water neck off. Still need to take off the little elbow that goes from the water neck to the water pump. Probably commenting how the design was better on older OBS Fords because the water neck was designed differently and the bolts were not as hard to get to. Okay, so right here I am talking about, here's the thermostat. I got it out. I was able to remove the other bolt for the water neck that holds the thermostat. You can see the gasket on the thermostat's in really bad shape. It looked to be the original thermostat. It's a 195-degree thermostat, which is the OEM specification. It's actually pretty clean, which means they took care of the coolant. We'll come back over here. You can see the stud, the broken bolt sticking out, and we're going to have to figure out what to do with that before we can continue, because you need both bolts and you need them both snug in order to create enough pressure to keep coolant from leaking, basically. So we're going to have to run through a bunch of different options of vice grips or heat or whatever we can come up with to try and get that off. The good news is there's enough meat sticking out that you have options. You don't have to drill it out, because I'm horrible at drilling out broken stuff, and easy outs never work for me. It's just terrible. Anyway, what actually winds up happening here is we are able to weld a nut onto that stud and cover it in coil and then heat it up till it glows, and after that I got the coil to penetrate, and it was good to go. Alright guys, welcome back. Today is a new day. So we were able to successfully get this fella out. It involved getting the welder out. It was not pretty. We got it, and threads are preserved, so we can go ahead and continue with changing out the thermostat. Let me go grab that. So our thermostat is an actual genuine Motorcraft part. This is an RT1139. It is a 195-degree thermostat, which was OEM temperature for this vehicle at this time in 1996. So here she is. Now, if you've not done a thermostat before, the one thing you should always remember is that the spring side, which is the side that kind of pokes out, is always installed towards the block, like that. Now the problem here is this is going to kind of float around, so I may actually install this on the water neck side. Once I go grab the water neck. So what we'll do is, instead of trying to insert this straight into the manifold, I'm going to put this in the water neck that I already went ahead and cleaned up, got all the junk off of it. So we do need to put a gasket here. You got two choices. You can make a gasket with Gasket Maker, RTV, room temperature vulcanization cream, whatever you want to call it. What I like to do is still use a gasket and then smear some RTV on it. So I have a, I think this is, yeah, Velpro 35440, what we need. So we'll go ahead and get this out. And then we're going to put a thin, emphasis on thin, film of RTV on both sides. RTV I have on tap today is some Ultra Black, which is oil resistant, but RTV is RTV is RTV for this particular application. Doesn't really matter what flavor it is. Still going to get the job done. So basically what I do, I'll take a little bit of RTV, put it on my finger, and just paint it, basically. And then you get a little bit more RTV, put it on your finger, and you rinse and repeat until you've got a thin layer of RTV on both sides of your gasket. This helps to ensure that it doesn't wiggle and jiggle, and also helps to seal if you have an imperfect surface, like say you have a 30-year-old intake, like this one is. You just don't want it to leak. Now, one thing to keep in mind is RTV cures as soon as it gets exposed to air. So once you open it, once you're on this particular step, you are on the clock. So you've got, I don't know, about 10 minutes to get this splayed out, ready to go. And also understand you're going to get RTV all over your fingers. Just accept it. Embrace it. This stuff goes everywhere. So we will get that covered. So that's one side. You kind of see how this goes. I'm going to flip it over, take care of the other side, and then I'll go ahead and get the water neck in. I'm not going to show you the other side. There's just no need for it. This is pretty straightforward. All right, so now you can see the gasket is stuck on there because of the RTV. I've got it reasonably close, and I don't have to worry about fighting with the gasket. It's another advantage of RTV. And because we are just directly going to put the water neck on, because we do have a paper gasket, we don't have to wait the 10, 15, 20 minutes for it to skin over and then compress it and do the full sequence if you're using RTV alone, which is another advantage to spend a couple bucks, get the gasket, that kind of thing. So as I mentioned, we had one bolt that's just toast, so can't use it again. So I went to the hardware auto parts store. I got a replacement. This is grade 8. It's going to go right there. But because of clearance issues with the water pump here, I'm having to reuse this other one that came out. And it's in good shape, and I cleaned it off with a wire wheel. But you got to have this one because it's just a hair shorter than this one, which gives you just enough clearance to sneak this in. It is it's a bad design. It's one of my shame on you Ford moments because they could have done better. Oh, you're kidding me. Tell me this is not going to get stuck. There we go. Wowzers. That was chalky. Guess we forgot that part. Remember, spring side towards the block, which like this. So we're going to kind of try to sneak this in there and keep the thermostat in there. Okay, so that's going to do that. Now it's going to try to come off and be really mean to me. So I'm gonna thread this with my fingers to get it started. Okay, so now the thermostat is trapped in place and is in position more or less. Now we got that one going, I can switch to the OEM bolt here and kind of try to sneak it in. Trying to remember how I got this out. It was very tight quarters. Oh, come on. Oh, that's close. That's really close. I may have to tap it a little bit. Let me fiddle fart with that because that's going to be a pain, and then I'll bring you back. All right, so I gave it a bit of a push with a wrench, and I managed to get it to slip through. Now I'm going to see if I can get it started. You can see the replacement. I went ahead and I ran down most of the way, but not all the way, so we can wiggle. I can try to get this guy started. Like I said, just really bad design on Ford's part. Really bad design. All right, looks like I got it started. All right, so as a reminder, this is a 1/2. If I can actually get it in there. Oh, that's gonna be so much fun to work on. I must have finger threaded it until I got it far enough back that I could actually get a wrench on it. So the way they put the water pump, you can't get at it with a socket. You have to use a wrench. And if you don't have a stubby, you have to move the chunk, the accessory chunk, in order to have swing room, which is why I haven't reattached that yet. So now I have swing room. Not a lot of swing room. I have it. All right, so I'm going to work on this, guys. Get this back on, then we're going to just keep rebuilding stuff so that we can fire this thing off and see if indeed we have fixed the running cool problem. All right, folks, I've got the little elbow fixed. I've got the water neck in, and I did indeed install it correctly. Yay. So next up on our list is we got to put the accessory chunk back in the right position. Now the accessory chunk is the thing that holds the, got my hand on it right here, it holds the power steering pump and the air conditioning, and I had to move it out of the way so that I could take care of the water neck. It needs to go back on. Good news here is, and I'll show you with the camera here, there is a stud right here, and this little bobber right there goes on that stud. Actually, I'm sorry, it does not, but there is a hole right next to it to the right that does. So I can use that as alignment to go ahead and just kind of pop this back up and into place. Make sure you don't have any wiring that potentially could get pinched whenever you go to move it back in position. We have these 3 very long 9/16 bolts, and then this is the nut that goes on the end of the stud. So you go ahead and, as you can see, that's one of your long bolt holes right there. I'm going to try to force this back in. Oh, force is kind of a strong. Yeah, that was nice. I need to put my camera in a different spot. Yeah, force is kind of a strong word, but yeah. Well, it's not a Not a terrible angle. Let's see what that does. Because this guy is kind of heavy, particularly with all the accessories still on it. Okay. That went a whole lot better than I thought it was going to go. Alright, so we're back on the alignment stud. And feed this down. Alright, got the chunk back in position, all 3 bolts and nut on tight. Those are all 9/16 as a reminder. So next thing we got to move on to is replacing the ECT. Took it out, create more working room around here. Got to put it back in. That sensor is super duper kind of important. Without it, the fuel injected engine gets mighty Twitter-pated. Let me tell you. So if I can get my light to stay still-ish, that works. So what I'd found out is the whole sensor neatly fits inside of a 3/4. So you just kind of load it up, spin it in by hand. And if you don't think you got enough pipe dope or Teflon tape there, do add a little bit. I think there's enough there already. So I'm just gonna wing it basically. Now we want to get this in to where it's snug, but not, we don't want to kill this. Okay. So that is now done, and we should have, oh, there's a little screw down there I'm going to retrieve. Here's our ECT connector. So now there's a hose that rotted out that I'm replacing that runs from this heat riser, I think it is, over to the throttle body, which again took off in order to make more room. That needs to go back on. And then we got to rerun the belt, and we got to put the upper radiator hose back on, top off coolant. Actually, I need to make sure it burps. Well, it'll burp. We got a degas bottle. So actually, no, that's not pressurized. So it's just, it's fine. It'll be fine. It'll burp. All right. So gonna shoot that little screw I saw and get this hose, get the throttle body back on, and then we'll be ready for the belt, I think. All right, let's go ahead and get this throttle body back on. I want to say these are 3/8 screws, though I did forget, when I put the TPS, when I replaced that, I put it kind of in a funny way. So I'm going to flip this thing around because it was interfering with a hose clamp. Don't think it's going to hurt anything long run. That is the jankiest door. I still managed to get my finger caught in it. Ouch. Ooh, that hurt. All right, so put that there. I'm gonna go ahead and just slip that off real quick and just kind of spin this around a little bit. It's going to complain and say the cable's too short. You can't do this. And I'll say, oh yeah. But you got to make sure that when you do that, you do actually catch the throttle body, like I mentioned whenever I did that. Oh, of course, throttle is. Yeah, that'll work. Throttle has been captured. Well, that is actually interesting. It looks like okay. And that should pretty much just go in. Uh-huh. So can it only go one way? No, there it goes. Okay. Run this guy in. This will probably be during the montage. Yeah, something like that. But this did clear the GPS codes. Did fix that, so that was nice. All right. Let's make sure this is still caught. Yeah, I see it rotating in there, but did I actually catch it? Let's see. Bum, bum, bum. Bum. Yeah, it's rotating. Okay. Cool. All right. Now that that's sorted, let's grab throttle body screws again. Get this guy on. And then, oh, there it is. So where'd the IAC valve connector go? Come on, don't take the gasket off. I don't want to buy a new gasket. All right, look, you gonna go in or not? There it goes. All right. So for folks out there watching, whether you are kind of new to mechanicking or you've done it before, something you like to do, something you hate, what are engines you've worked on? Which one you like the most, hate the most? I would be curious. I am mostly a Ford guy. But I am working on some GM stuff. Gotta say, I like how GM did the sensor work, but I do not like how GM put some other stuff together. I much prefer how Ford decided to go about it. Then Ford does funny things like oh yeah, those are 3/8. Then Ford goes and does funny things like you know, that water pump bolt. So I'm gonna finish getting these in, tighten that up. I'm gonna rerun that hose. Keep it moving. All right, so I replaced this blown out hose, some power steering line, that should be fine. Reconnected the throttle, don't forget about that. Plug the IAC back in, don't forget about that. And then we also do have this coolant line here. So don't forget about that. Get that back on. Dun, 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 dun. Yeah. And also do not forget there is a vacuum line that should be lurking over here somewhere. No, that is our charcoal canister line. That's going to stay there. Where did our vacuum line go? Here's our vacuum line. That comes in right there. Okay. So now we're down to just the belt and the upper rad hose. So for the belt, it is a modified belt because the smog pump has been removed from the pulley lineup. There's pieces of it left, like this guy, but it just sits there. Smog pump is long, long gone, so I'm not going to worry about it. That's the reason why these guys helpfully put a little modified diagram, and they even put down a belt number. So now we're going to do the fun feedy game. Remember, your idle tensioner is a 15 millimeter, and you need to pull it to the left to get it to release tension. So we're going to fight to get this belt back on, and then I'll bring you back when we have it done, because it's really hard to kind of see anything from any angle. All right, hoses are back in, belt's back on. That was not very fun, but me. So I'm going to go ahead, top the coolant back off. This was a little low when I got it. The radiator was mostly full, but the overflow bottle was empty. So we're going to just take care of that. Probably going to top off the power steering because the super noisy Ford pump is noisier than normal. And it looks like it does leak. And then I'll bring you guys inside the cab where I'm going to rebuild the driver's dash cluster so we can actually fire this thing off and do stuff. So this is our cluster. And didn't film taking it out. It's very, very, very similar to the other videos I've done where I've pulled clusters. I have one for the van. I think I have one for my truck. I can put those links in the description on how to do that. But I want to check, make sure all of our bulbs are here and not burned out. As you can see, anything you see that is one of those black twists, like right here, that's a light bulb. And you twist them, pop them out. And then what we can do is we can connect them to a power source, a 12-volt power source, and make sure they're good. And for a 12-volt source, I've got this cute little battery. This actually goes in my project truck here, this F100. It's not going anywhere right now, so what we will do is we're going to take these little test wires I've got. One end will get touched on the battery, the other end will get clipped to the light bulb, and we can do that to see what bulbs are good and what bulbs are bad and in need of replacement. Okay, so there's two little metal legs that come off the bulb. These bulbs don't care about polarity, so you can touch the battery however you want. It's not going to hurt anything. And in this case, this bulb is good, so wipe the grease off and we'll put it back where it belongs. That flickering you see is because of intermittent connection. Another way you can do this is you clip onto these little metal wings on the edge of the socket, and you can try that way too. Either or, these alligator clamps are a little bit too large for the job, but I can make them work. So rinse and repeat. I'm going to go through all of these bulbs, make sure they're good. And any that are bad, I've got a small supply and I'll swap them out. Just another $0 improvement just from junk I got lying around. All right, so I have gone ahead and I have replaced all the burned out bulbs. There were 4 or 5 of them, and then I cleaned most of the schmoo off the front here. So this thing is good. Next thing we need to worry about is actually the shift indicator. So one thing I noticed is shift indicator, I couldn't see it. I could shift fine, but I couldn't see it. So I took it out, and it was pegged all the way in the corner, and it's pegged because it uses a spring to provide tension on this wire. And then the other end of that wire is this guy. And it's supposed to be crimped into that little metal bit. Come on, camera. It's supposed to be crimped into that little metal bit right there. You can see it broke. And then this goes over a post, and that provides the tension. So as you move the shifter, it will move to the appropriate gear. So I got to figure out how I want to fix that. I don't know if I'm going to try to crimp it with something or zip tie it or what I'm going to do. But I'm going to ponder this and I'll get back to you. Alrighty, so where we're leaving this for now, it's kind of difficult to see, but what I decided to try is put a drop of gel-based super glue, some Gorilla Glue, and just gluing that together in a loop, and we'll see if it holds. I'm going to give it a full 24 hours to cure before I do anything. Then I'll try to reinstall this and see what I get. Alright, so everything's back together, and now we're going to do a test fire. So I crank it, and see the battery gauge moves up, oil pressure comes up, so the engine's running at this point, even though you can't really tell from the dash. So go out. I want to make sure everything's okay over here, so you can see the belts spinning, making sure that the upper radiator hose is clear of the belt. Make sure it sounds okay, looks okay. As you can see, the engine is not shaking and getting good suction off the fan. And overall, everything looks really good. At least. Good afternoon, everyone. Today is a new day. So where we had left off is we had a leak coming out of this area down here somewhere. Couldn't quite figure out what was going on. I thought maybe it was the water pump, but upon closer examination, I think the issue was the elbow that runs from, you can see the two pieces there that run from the water neck to the water pump. I thought maybe there was a leak there. I pulled that hose. It's marginal. I bought a replacement. Cost me $8. And the other thing that I found out was that my new bolt there on the water neck, I didn't have it tight. That was loose. And the original bolt was slightly loose. I think it was just leaking from the bottom of the water neck. So tighten that up, and I'm going to put the new hose in and put this back together right quick. We'll refill with coolant, and we'll see if we took care of the leak. Alrighty, folks, forgive the noise. So we've let it run for a while. Hose is real hot, feels hard, so pretty sure the thermostat has dumped, but the ECT shows 180. I can show you that. So I'm thinking that the engine coolant temperature sensor is slightly bad. See, 181. I think that really should be like 195 or 200. And that can happen. They can get a little bit off, not a lot of bit off. It's close enough that it's pulled back the fuel trims. We're not running rich anymore, which is good, because before it was just dumping gas like a stinker. And more importantly, if you look under here, it's nice and dry. So I fixed the coolant leak. The leak was the screws were loose on the water neck. So for the time I have today, we're done. So next up on what else can we fix for under $200 is we're going to take a look at this battery terminal, because I happen to have one laying around in my shop. So we're going to take care of that. We are going to address our busted up HVAC. And that is important because this truck has AC that works. The compressor turns on. But when you turn the blower on, you get almost no flow, and the blower sounds healthy. So I'm thinking that because we have vacuum leaks up here, we've lost blend door control and we've lost temp door control. Get that fixed, get those fixed. That fixes the air conditioner and the heat, which are, kind of important. And I have stuff to fix the door hinges. I have stuff to fix the tailgate, in the hood. So we get all that straightened out, and I'm right under 200. Right under 200. I'm going to see if I can't, I might have an ECT I can throw in here to make this more better if the owner is willing to part with it. But yeah, this thing fires right up and it runs like a sewing machine. It is awesome. And the stuff I'm fixing now is more quality of life. So, bring you back when I have more time. This is going to be a long video. But it's, you know, what can you fix for under 200 bucks? Well, turns out you can fix quite a lot as long as you're willing to put the elbow grease in. Good afternoon, everyone. Today is a new day. So today's focus is going to be on continuing to see what we can fix for, 200 bucks. And specifically what we're going to start out with today, as you can see me working on it here, is let's redo our positive battery terminal. This one's in pretty rough shape. And I do happen to have another kind of simple terminal laying around. So I'm gonna go ahead and get that transferred over. Not a huge fan of the terminals that you get at your part house, but there's a nicer military style terminal that I really like, but you have to do a little work to your cable ends to be able to utilize it. And I installed those on my van, actually. But I didn't make a video about it because I thought it'd be like a little 5-minute fix video. And then it was not a 5-minute fix. It turned into like a hour-long job and involved some fabrication. So let that be. See if we can't get this off. There we go. Okay, got that off. The actual battery terminal looks fine, but this terminal here it ain't great. I'm not a fan. So see here, these are just probably a 10. So let me go see. We'll get these wires out. We'll see if we can't stack them better. And our new terminal's here, so it's gonna be a little bit of a tighter fit, but I think we can make it work. So this guy wound up being an 11, which normally means it's a metric. Probably a 3/8 is my guess. Sorry, SAE. I said metric and SAE. Oddly enough, most of the vehicles I've worked on in my adult life have all been metric, so I actually think better in metric than I do SAE. Okay, that's 1, and that's 2. All right. Moment of silence for the torched battery terminal. All right, so we're gonna loosen. So someone had already done the usual quick mod, which is you flip the top so that it puts better pressure on the wires you put in the middle. So we'll go ahead and we'll do that on this guy. So get the bolts out. Flip the top real quick. Get a bolt back in there. All right, let's see if we can't shove some wire in there. If I were so inclined, I would actually probably try to re-terminate this, but I don't think I have enough wire. And the wire is not great looking, but nor is it horrible. So Let's see, we can't smash this flat. Obviously, at the moment, that's really loose. Really, a socket would be better for this job. May wind up doing that. So the thing I'm trying to avoid is having a bunch of copper just hanging out. That's not a great connection. Let's see here. Yeah, it's not tight enough for it to actually do stuff yet. Anyway, you guys kind of get the deal here. Actually, you can't even see a darn thing because I'm left-handed. So basically all we're doing here is we're just shoving the wire in as far as we can in the hopes that we make a good solid connection, both for positive battery terminals here. Kind of like this. We'll make these as tight as we can. So this is, again, this isn't great, but it's better than it was, which is kind of the point. Anywho's, that's kind of what we're going to wind up with. It's better than it was. So pro tip when you put a new terminal on. The key here is that you just have a good connection. The ends don't have to be crushed in. It doesn't even have to sit all the way at the bottom. The key is that you just have a good clean connection between your terminal and your post. As long as you have that, good to go. So this looks all right. This looks pretty good. Let's go ahead and crank it. See how she sounds. It may be unhappy with me. Apparently I left something plugged in last night. Let's see. Well, that looks encouraging. There you go, cranked up just fine. So, that's another one fixed. New terminal should last a while, providing nobody kills it. Okay, I think next thing we'll move on to is fixing those HVAC lines up in the corner. All right, so here's our HVAC. We've got two broken lines here. We have one broken off inside of the T, and this one is broken off a little bit outside. And we're gonna have to basically rig up something to make it work. This is a one-way check valve, so it lets stuff in, doesn't let it go back out. And I know this is HVAC because this system is very similar to my 94 B3000 that I had. And I also had to do repairs on this on my brother's F250. But what this controls are your blend door and your temp door. Blend door is the thing that dictates, well, sorry, I guess blower door and blend door, because the blend door dictates how much hot and cold air get blended into what's coming out into the cabin. So it's your hot and cold knob, basically. And then your blower door dictates how much of the blower you get. Because the truck situation right now is it has ice cold air conditioning, but barely any flow out the vents. And my theory is that because this vacuum line's broken, the vacuum switch, which is one of them anyway, it's right there, can't do its job. So truck really doesn't have effective AC right now. So we are going to figure out how to fix this. I'm thinking what I'm going to do is see if I can't replace this T and then run some fresh line off the T and then splice it into the existing line. So here is one stub right here. I know you can barely see it. Oh, there you go, a little bit better. It's okay, so we can take a bigger line and shove it over the top of that to make that repair. And then the other one is a lot more stubbed. It's I found it the other day and I have forgotten where it is, but it's there. It is. It's kind of buried. There it is, up there. I really need to remove this thing. This is for a light that they strung up and then removed. But these are the repairs we got to make. So let me scrounge around my vacuum lines and see what I can do to fix this up. And because this is a case of low vacuum, if you don't have vacuum tubing, try using wiper line tubing. It's about the same size. It'll hold the vacuum. It'll work. So get creative. See what you can find. All right, so I've got, this is a variety pack of T-tubes, another variety pack of T-tubes, and I've got some, I think most of this is actually wiper fluid line of various sizes. I got some nips, and let's see what we can figure out. I'm going to move you back over to here, kind of in the neighborhood where we need to be. Twist. Okay, that seems pretty stable. Here's the target. First thing we're going to do, like I said, is we're going to get this T off. See what we can do with it. All right. So yeah, that snapped on the interior. Now this check valve's in one piece. It just is a little bit of transference there. It's not that there's a piece of tubing stuck in there or anything. Oh, doggy is sad. He wants to go in. All right, let me see if I got a vacuum tube that will fit on that. All right, let me show you what I've put together here. Now, obviously, I need to trim these hoses so they're going to be appropriate lengths, but for rough fitting, here's what I got. Got this hose. It fits onto the check valve snugly, which is good. And then that's going to go into a T. That'll be a very short segment, just to make sure I can get these two together. So then we'll be on a T, and it fits on that T just fine. Then we have a more narrow diameter hose that I got to fight with it, but I can get it on the T. And that more narrow diameter hose slips over the existing vacuum line. Oh no. Well, proof in concept, but that just snapped way back here. Oh no. That just made this a lot more interesting. Okay, well, I'll have to find the stub there and see if I can tack onto it, but the premise is still good. Slide onto some existing line, and the existing line is good. Otherwise, what we'll have to do is actually run fresh line all the way back into the cabin, into the passenger floorboard. That's the other end of that vacuum line. So we can do that as well. And just run an entirely fresh line. And if that's the case, we're still good because it's on this other stub that I showed you up here. Same deal. That should fit over that, providing that, you know, the line doesn't snap somewhere I can't access it. And we should be good. So let me start snipping things and repairing things and sliding things over things. And let's see if we can get this working. Okay, guys, found the end. It's right here. Somebody's already been in here and they made a repair. And they also made a repair here. This line often rots out. Because what happens is, even with the hood closed, sunlight sneaks in through this crack, and it gets on the vacuum lines through here, and then they fall apart. So this is the white one, goes down. I remember fixing this one on my brother's truck. And then here's another one. That's the one that just snapped on me. But as you can see up here, this has been protected by loom. So this wire here is actually in pretty good shape, or this vacuum line. So I'll probably pick it up from here with some soft line, bring it over and around. So we're still good. I can still fix this. Just had to go find it. And then I'll put it all back in the loom, which is what this stuff is right here. And I'll tape it back up so that the repair will last for a while. Hey guys, there you have it. So I've replicated a new tee. I've ran fresh line to it, and this should work. Now I just need to clean this up over here, put this back in the loom, but we can go ahead and we can do a test, turn the engine on, and see if that did indeed fix the door issues with the HVAC. All right, so that definitely fixed the blend door issue, because now I've got good healthy flow coming through here, whereas before I didn't. Let's see if we have any heat. I doubt that we will. The engine's probably cold, but we can definitely test the air conditioning. Oh, turned on. Oh yeah, that's ice cold and it's blowing hard, so that's definitely a fix. And the other part of that fix is that we just plugged 2 vacuum leaks. They were tiny vacuum leaks, but they were still vacuum leaks. So that, oh yeah, that is ice cold. That is outstanding. Set back the vent. Last thing would be to check the heat. But the truck probably needs to idle a few minutes to do that. So we will let it do that. So other things we need to look at is the radio doesn't work. I have a suspicion on what's going on there. I got to figure out what's up with this enormous fuse. It's keeping me from putting the fuse panel cover on. I have not tested the parking brake yet. Might be a little scary. The driver's door jamb switch is busted. I actually ordered a new one of those. I'm still under 200 bucks. I'm at $192. So that's on the way. And yeah. It's hard to see. In fact, you can't see it at all right now, but the bulbs over here aren't lighting up, and they should, because I tested them. So I got to get into that. Anyway, I will bring you back once the engine warms up to verify that indeed we have heat. I was thinking that you guys probably want some better proof on did this actually work. So I forgot I had a temp gun. So this is vent set to cold. It's about 85. Sure, that's about the high today. So set it to heat. Yeah. It's getting warm, so as you can see, that's working fine. We have heat. Then set it to AC. The only tricky thing about using a heat gun is if you don't point it in the right spot, it winds up not giving you an accurate read. As you can see, we are below the vent temp, and it feels fairly cold, so just kind of give you guys a little bit better confirmation that yeah, it is working. And yeah, it's now actually blowing, whereas before it was not blowing. And this isn't the best vent to test on, because you know, it kind of, this whole piece is loose. This is probably a little bit better, but just wanted to show you guys that. Alrighty, so to take this cowling off, which we're going to need to do, or at least get this side lifted so we can figure out where the hose rotted off or was cut off. Got to take this screw out, and then if we look up here where you see those circles, those are where screws are located. So we need to at least get those loose and maybe get enough altitude that we can see where under here the hose is. Worst case scenario, you got to take the whole thing off, which means that the wiper arms have to come off. That's going to involve this little doodle flopper right here, if I remember right. Because there's like a latch, you get it out of the way, and then you can wiggle this off. This is, I am having a brain fart. This has teeth on it, basically, that you have to slide onto. It's splined. All right, folks. So I did finally. I found the remnants of the washer line. It's right here. I actually had a piece break off, but this piece is in a little bit better shape. So I should be able to work with it. Now, in order to see that, I had to be able to lift this up and slide this around a little bit. But to do all that, there are the screws I mentioned earlier, and then every single screw you see along here, it'll not be fuzzy all the way down. You got to take those out. Do that, take out the screws up top there, and then the cowl comes loose to where it'll slide around. And I was able to identify the line. If you wanted to finish taking it out though, honestly, I think you have to take the hood off, because you need to be able to lift up and out, and you can't do that because the hood's right there. So I think if you wanted to finish taking the cowl off, like if you needed to service the actual wiper arm linkages or something, hood's got to come off. But for my purposes, I was able to see what I needed to see. So I'm going to get that kit of vacuum tubing and the various set of three-way connectors. I'll use some two-way connectors. See if we can't get this thing spliced back together, back over to the other end here, which temporarily I have capped off with the vacuum line. As soon as I take that cap off, it's going to spew. So see what I can figure out. All right, here's the setup. Can't see it right now because I had to route it. Oh, hang on. Let me get this light away. It's causing interference on the camera. Basically speaking, I took pretty small, just tube, something like this, but smaller. And I plugged that into the original line up in here. But the reason why I can't see it, I had to kind of tuck it back there because I had to run it above and behind the hinge so that when the hood closes, that it's not going to pinch anything. So that's why the line comes around through here. And I'm going to have to be careful with that as well, because this has got to slide back into position and screw in, and then the line comes down through here. I have it meeting up with the original line here with another tube. So I'm going to go ahead and test it, make sure we don't have leaks. And if everything looks good, then I'll put the cowl back in position and we'll call this a good repair. All right, I'll let you guys see what I see here. Take a look. It's sort of working, but there's a little fountain right behind the wiper. So the connection to the original line up top is leaking. It can't take the pressure. I got to come up with a better sort of fit up there. Otherwise, these things aren't going to work real well. Technically speaking, they are working, but they're not working well enough to be useful. So let me see what I can do with that. All right, I suspect there's a leak further up the line that was causing that, so I need to get the cowling off, and I figured out how to do that. You got to pull it back up, forward, up, get it over. There's a metal tab on each end. Get that tab out and over the trim, and then you can start to try to work it loose, but you're still kind of trapped because of the wiper arms, so those need to come off. And to do that, you want to take, I would prefer you say you take a pick, hook it in that ring right there. Try not to scrape up the windshield. These haven't been worked in a long time, so. But get this to come out and then start to lift and wiggle and jiggle on the arm, and it should pop off. It is splined, and what you may want to do is mark this with some tape or something like that. Make it a little easier to get these things back on where they need to be. So I'm going to fight with that. I think maybe if I lift the hood, that'll help. And I'll bring you back. All right. So a whole bunch of pieces broke through here. So I just went ahead and I replaced the entirety of this with rubber line. Hopefully that holds. You see that I got the cowling back down. It's not screwed in, but I've got it back in position. And the reason why I did that is I need to test. But before you test, you have to make sure your wipers are back in position. Because otherwise the splines, they'll lose their home. And then it'll be a long, painful process of trying to get these back where you want them. So I used the dirt marks on the windshield to kind of get these close to where I wanted them. I think this will work. We're going to find out. So I'm going to do the test, and if everything's okay, then I'm going to screw this guy back in and we'll be done with that. I can understand why they chose not to try to repair this, because boy, oh boy, is it a pain to get that cowl loose. All right, here we go. And we have basically nothing, which means we are leaking somewhere. The wiper arms are okay. That one's a little higher than it should be, but this one's correct, so I can reset that one a little bit lower. But man, did all of that, and we are still leaking. That is stinky. I'll have to see what's going on. Good morning, everyone. Today is a new day. We're going to pick back up with the radio. So I had mentioned that I thought that this connector here was like a ground connector for the radio. That is not true. What this goes to is the warning chime buzzer box, which has been deleted on this truck. I can understand why. It's a pretty obnoxious buzzer for this generation of truck. But that's what that goes to for anybody playing along at home. So here's our radio, and I did a little bit of digging that I did not film, but basically I can show you here. There are two fuses that control the radio. Now this truck's old enough that you actually, you've got a list out of the fuses here. Otherwise, you can find a site online. There's plenty of them. But fuse number 11 is the interior radio fuse. So 11 is there. It's below 12, which is a big silver looking thing that this truck doesn't have because it's for features this truck doesn't have, which means it's this fuse here. And I have already checked it. It is good. There is another fuse that is under the hood. So we come over here to the driver's side. we had the PDU, the power distribution unit, power distribution box. I pop that guy open. So you're going to see relays, what I call mega fuses. I actually don't know their exact name. There's a diode here. And then we got a couple of smaller regular fuses. This guy here is specifically the radio fuse. That's all it does. And this one was blown, so I did swap that out. Which leads us to, now if the radio is turned on and you turn power on, you get that. You get a poof sound. But that's it. So no fuses are blowing, but the radio itself is pretty dead. So I'm guessing that something internal to the radio is dying, or we have a bad connection. Now, I do happen to have a replacement radio that will work. It is also fairly busted, but it still works. My brother gave permission to take it out of his truck, so we're going to go ahead and try to swap them. So Ford did at this point have the quick release tools, which I have laying around somewhere. So let me go find those, and we'll go ahead and try to swap these radios and see if we can get something working in here. All right, and to switch tripods there, but whoa, sorry, this is going to rock a bit because it's sitting on the bench. But this is your removal tool. It hooks in here, and then if you were to see the other side of this, there's some tabs that are holding the radio in, and we're going to need to, if I remember right, flex to the outside, and then kind of shimmy, shake, wiggle the radio, get it out. I've removed newer radios that were doubled in, meaning it's still taller. But, okay, that sounds good. That sounds good. Yeah, just like that. Oh, this looks like it was a junkyard radio. Here we go. So these also have a clip up top to help hold the radio in. And so here we are. Don't know if that connector was loose or not. I may fiddle fart with this a little bit. And then if it's truly dead, then swap that other one in. Here's a side view. So you engage it only to about here, and then you pull outward, and that wiggles the radio out. So, oh, check it out, guys. If I wiggle,
I wanted the fame, but not the cover of Newsweek. Oh well, guess niggas can't be choosy.
volume. Trying to avoid issues of copyright here. But if I play around with these wires back here, you can see I can get some of the display to come back, and I can get the radio to work. So this guy may still work. I just need to, there's a loose connection somewhere. I need to fiddle fart with this, see if I can't stabilize it, because I would prefer to use this one than the other one. Other one's from an earlier F series. It has zero display at all. It does work, but it has no display. So I did some fiddling, and the connector that is our stinker is this guy. If I can get that to clean up. It's this one here. I don't know if it's on the radio side. I think it's the harness, the pigtail head, but I'm going to spray these down with some electronics cleaner. Maybe we're just having a bad contact issue, and we'll see what happens. All right, folks, so radio is working, and it's hard to see, but I even got the display sort of working. So the display itself is probably all right, but the connector probably is using a basically a conductive tape on the display, because I can push on the display and it'll come and go. And that's the best I can get out of it. It is usable. Again, I've got it muted because, you know, copyright stuff, but if I see, radio is now working.
It keeps everybody standing tall.
Now, I don't know if the cassette tape is working because I actually don't have a cassette tape to test it with. I really ought to do that if I keep working on these old piles of junk. Anyway, radio is now working. That was an unexpected surprise. I'm kind of delighted that that's working again. Just some loose connections back there. And so we're going to move on. I think the next thing that I want to go after, because I don't want to have to dig into the instrument cluster again. I had 2 lights that didn't light up back there. I just don't feel like fighting with that right this very second. Next thing I think I want to do is actually take this bench out and clean out the cab. And also there's a chunk of the bench that's behaving in a scary fashion that I need to fix before I can hand this off with a clean conscience. So I think that's what we'll do next. All right, so bench is out. This is all the num-nums underneath that we're going to clean out and sort out. So we've got to make sure that we can feed the seat belts through, that, you know, there's no hidden rust or anything. I don't think there is. This truck's pretty solid. Clean all this out, see if there's any fun things we can find. So for removing the bench, you've got, that's a 15 millimeter bolt. And here in the back, you have a 15 millimeter nut. You have the same thing on the other side. Once you get all that out, the bench just lifts up and out. This is an old enough and simple enough truck that it doesn't have any wires connected to the bench. If you still have seat belts threaded through, you got to push that out of the way. But otherwise, you're left with this. So I'm going to start cleaning this out, and I'll bring you back if I find anything interesting. All right, here's what we look like after cleaning. There was a bunch of insulation here. I just threw it away. I cleaned all the trash out. Items of note were a really honking huge washer, a hotel key card, a lock, which will probably go in my junk bin because I don't have a key for it, a random key for something, no clue what it's for, push pin, this will be handy, 2 springs, I may save these, hose clamps, because hose clamps are always good. And if somebody, no, I'm throwing this away, but I found it impressive. There's an entire crumb cake in here. So anywho's, that's what we got going on there. This is more or less cleaned up. And now that this is done, I'm going to turn my attentions to a couple other things, such as the bench was acting funny, and the reason why it was acting funny is that somebody had pinched the seat belt in it long ago. Now, I consider this a safety issue, so what I'm going to do is take the seat belt from my brother's truck. It should be compatible because it's a 93, this is a 96, and remove this and do a transplant to get a safer belt in here so it can be used. So most likely it'll be 1 or 2 passengers. Right, though technically the bench is designed for 3. That's what that stuff in the middle is all about. And then we're going to take care of the bench itself, which is it's in pretty decent shape, except for one thing. So when you come over here, take a look down here. There is supposed to be a spring that runs up to that little lock right there.
Here's just twin.
Yeah. Here's the one that's still in one piece. And what that does is when you are manipulating the bench slide, it's supposed to...
It's a return spring.
Yeah. It's supposed to help lock it. And so this side locks, and then this side doesn't. And then it's super scary because it feels like it's flying apart. So as you can see, this spring's busted, but I do happen to have some springs left over from some drum brake work that I've done, and I'm going to see if one of those can fill the role, and just basically insert a new spring in here, see if we can't get this fixed, and then I might clean up in there a little bit more. I'm going to take care of the seatbelt first, and then we'll put the bench back in, and it should be good to go. All right, so to get this particular trim panel off so that we can get down to the bolt that's holding this in down here, we've got 1, 2, it's a little hard to see, 3, and right there, 4 that need to come out. And then over here, we have 1, 2, I think that one's missing. And probably this speaker enclosure has to come out. And I think that will do it. That'll let us get down here into the corner where we can see. And then we can, there's probably a big T50 that's holding us in. Pop that loose. We can get this guy out of here. All right, so I got that piece out and I've got the vinyl up, and as you can see, these windows have been leaking for a while and no one cleaned out the dirt. We are starting to get some, this is light rust at the moment. It's not going to hurt anything, but I need to clean out all this dirt that got jammed in the channel and clean all this up. And I'm going to fix the door so no more water should leak in, so this shouldn't be a major concern. All right, guys, check it out. So my brother, he had to use a propane torch and some persuasion, but he modified what started out life as this leftover brake drum spring, and he got it to fit as our return spring over on this side. So this should be repaired, so when we put the bench back in, that death rattle that scares the bejeebers out of you if you're a passenger shouldn't be happening, because after you slide the bench, both sides will now lock again. So, see? So now it doesn't matter which side that you actuate the slide from.
You only get one.
Oh, okay. I was thinking about the tilt. The tilt you can go from either side, but the slide has to be done from the driver's. Here's the lever. But now we're good to go here, and it should lock when you do that. So this bench is good to go. Meanwhile, as you can see, I'm just digging garbage out over here. And I'll dig out as much as I can. I might get some air on it to help blow it out. I'm not sure if my vacuum will do well with this because this dirt's going to be wet and heavy. But I'm going to take care of that. And then shall turn my attentions up here. This should be a T50 or a T55 based on what I remember. And once we get that out of the way, this entire corner trim piece will come out and we'll be able to get down here, take that out. Okay, so in order to get this trim piece out, I did have to take our speaker off. This is the original Ford speaker, so it still has the connector, so pop that off. And then there is behind it right here, that's why I had to take it off. That's the last screw that's holding this in place. That gets you down to here, get you off the tripod here. It gets you down to here, and then below there, take a look. We got another, this is a T50, and it was a T50 up here holding that. So get yourself a T50 and get these out, and then we can go ahead and swap in the replacement belt. So before I got started on this side, I wanted to show you how bad it was. So you've got, this is because the door hinge is sagged and water's been coming in for a while. So again, this steel is still good for now. Next owner, whoever you are, probably want to take a look at that. But you see all this dirt got packed in here, and because it's all packed in here, it can't dry out, and it's causing rust damage. But I think I got to it in time. So I'm gonna clean all this out, hit it with some air to get the channel fully emptied. I'm gonna have to vacuum the cab back out again, but not a big deal. I'll take care of all that, then I'll be done over on this side, and I'll rebuild all this. All right, so we're gonna move on over I'm going to let all of this dry out, which is what you're seeing right now, and then I'm going to vacuum and sweep, and then do a little bit of painting I need to do. I'll probably do not really anything over here, maybe there. Get all that done. Still need to switch that out, but I'm trying to let some oil soak in. Anyway, we're missing a handle here. Need to fix that. So we got to take this door card off to do it. Now from what I can see, we have 1 and 2, and someone added a 3 and a 4 and a 5, and then also have to pop the crank handle off for the window itself, and then this should come off, and then we can take a look and see what the heck happened to our handle. Alright, so these come out pretty much as you think they would. These were 7mm, and then for your crank handle, pop this little cover off, slide it out of the way, and there's probably a T15 in there, and we clean that out or pop that out, and then there may still be like a retaining clip in here, or we may just be able to wiggle this out. I don't quite remember which. Alright, so what this turned out to be is that's a T15, take that out, that's what was holding it onto the splines, and then bloop, comes right out. So then this, yep, should pretty much just come off, which it did, and it looks like we had a plastic handle and it just broke. That's what I see here. So I think if we loosen this bolt off, throw the new handle in, we should be good. So yeah, here we are, just it broke. So this was Loctited in. It was an 8mm, wasn't hard to get out. So here we go. Now the question's going to be is these plastic chokes here that hold the cable in are notorious for breaking. I have a 97 van where I had to replace all of these, and it was horrible. So the question is going to be is when we put the new handle on and we pull this, is this going to shatter into a bazillion pieces, and then that's busted. So let's find out. Okay, so this is Dorman Help replacement handle. This one is a 77177. This is the plastic one. You can get it in metal as well if that's your jam. I think the prices were roughly the same, truthfully. So we've got, bring it in here. We've got a notch here to make it so that this handle can only go on one way, and then we just run the bolt through. Hang on a second, let me reposition you. There, that's a little better. Let me come over here. Let's see here. So if we set this up like that, I would say it goes like that. So let me get the bolt back in and see if this works. So I'll put the bolt here. Then let's actually get the tool. Here we go. Oh, wrong way. Okay, so we're on the pin. Let's see. Oh. Yeah, I can see why it broke. Something here does not want to move. And that should be unlocked, so I think we have a stuck spring here. So probably what happened is this was getting stickier and stickier and stickier until finally it seized up. Yeah, I'm watching it here. And so then folks didn't bother to maintenance this. They just kept ripping on this, and eventually it gave up. So guess we need to get some lube in here and some pry tools. Try to get this moving so that this handle won't snap off. Okay guys, so I took some PB Blaster, just hosed all of this down, and then I started working this just a little bit, and then it started to move. So I can hear it working the lock. In fact, we should be able to push down the lock like that and it'll pop it up. Yep, it did. So this is good and lubed. I'll probably hit it with some lithium grease. I'll hit it with some air to get crap out, and then I'll hit it with some lithium grease so it'll stay lubed for a while, and I'm not going to look crossways at that. I don't want it to break. Okay, so now we have a working inside handle on this side, and then I can go ahead and put the door card back on, which is kind of nice because this kind of exploded. But the good news is, because I got all the trim out and I got the carpeting out and the thick heavy dirts out, it is all drying out, which is the important thing. So then I can vacuum and do all the other stuff I talked about and hopefully fix it. Alrighty. So as I let the cab dry out a little more, I'm going to go ahead and bring my attentions back to the rear end of the truck, to the tailgate. So where we are right now is this isn't really doing a whole lot to unlatch anything. As you can see, we're latched at both sides. Can't really get it undone. So what we're going to need to do is take off this liner here. And we got a mixture of some homebrew. I think these are 7 or 8s. To sum this segment up in short, I'm taking the T30s out on the access plate so that we can actually get access to the latch mechanism in the arms that reach out to the actual latches at the ends of the tailgate. Okay, so in this one, got the tailgate open. I was able to reach in, grab the arms and pull them in manually so I could get the gate down. And the good news is that all the pieces and parts are there. But the bad news is while the spring is working to pull the arms, the arm on the driver's side is not returning all the way. And I think that led to some of the issue as to why you can't unlatch it. So I'm going to take some lube, some lithium grease, and just work it back and forth a bunch and see if I can't get this thing to loosen up enough that it will latch on its own. Alright, so I worked it, and now, as you can see, the tailgate will go down and come back up, and the latch is working as intended. Alright folks, check this out. So this truck came with, did not realize it, but a giant mat that in turn sat on top of a plastic bed liner. And I've cleaned both out. There's a little water from when it rained a few days ago. But that should hopefully dry out, because I've raked most of it out. But if you take a look underneath here, that metal is in perfect shape. So this bed, even though it's almost 30 years old, because of the combination of the liner and this giant mat, this steel is in perfectly good shape. So I'm going to use a little more air, try to clean this up a little bit more. Then I'm going to load the mat back in there. Alright, so that is the remains of our door jamb switch. That's the thing that will turn on the exterior cargo lights and turn on your interior courtesy light when it is up, and when the switch is pushed in, those don't turn on because the door's closed, right? Well, I got a new one. It costs like $7 or $8. 9/16 on that Jamb nut. Ugh. So I have never replaced one of these before. I'm not quite sure how it works. So I'm just going to take something off and see what happens. So it's wanting to move and slide, but it's not wanting to come out. I can feel the wire on the back end. So the question is, how do I get to that wire? I'm going to guess we get to it from around where the hood release is. So let me check that out, because otherwise I'd have to grab onto these threads so I can keep spinning this nut off, and I may have to do that anyway, but if I can take the wire off, then I think we'll be alright. So let me take a look at that. Alright, so what I found is I had to spin this, the nut spun to the end of its travel, and then I had to spin this a little bit further to get it clear of the threading in the door, and then it came out. And now I just got to figure out how to actually detach the broken one. I think it just slides out. Is it? Yeah, okay. Or that looks kind of broken to me. So let me look at the new one and see if it slides on right there, or if this copper piece I'm holding needs to come out as well. I'm thinking it does, because that looks chewed up and broken. Alright, so I stared at my new one here. Saw the tri-connector, saw where it was. So I just kept tugging, making sure that I didn't strain on these wires, and it came out. So old one's out. I'm gonna guess this is keyed, so it can only go back in one way, or I hope that's it. Otherwise I could see where this won't work right. But our new one looks fairly similar to the old one. It's going to go in like this, plug it in, screw it back in, see what we get. Oh, forgot to mention, this is a standard T series, which that's their economy line. It is a DS278T. Okay, so what I found is I checked on the passenger side, and the switch works fine over there. The one I just got, the standard one. So there's something up with the wiring back here. I took a voltmeter and I checked for voltages, and sure enough, I found 12 volts on the positive and the ground. So there's power getting to it, which means that most likely this is not a fuse problem, unless there are two fuses that help control this. This particular door jamb by Gummer. But if that were to be true, then it would mean that when I most likely when I open the passenger door, this should not turn on, but it does. So again, I'm not really thinking it's a fuse problem. That is a 2-wire over there. This is a 3-wire. This is actually the passenger switch. They're identical. They're both 3-terminal switches. So I guess one last thing I can do before I move on with what I was trying to do is I'll run through these fuses real quick and see which ones control the courtesy dome light, which I think is okay, but also which one controls the buzzer. And maybe there's something that can be found there. So looking at our handy dandy fuse panel again. Warning buzzer, chime modulator, exterior lamps, instrument illumination, trailer, instrument illumination. So that's pretty easy to check. Key on. Yep, it's working. So it's not that one. What else do we have? I know nothing in the engine bay is fried because I checked it. Turn lamps. So courtesy dome, I know the dome works. She just heard the radio's working. This also is for the warning buzzer. But all of that is working, so not that one. Warning buzzer, chime module, warning indicators. This is for diesel. But it says gauges, tachometer, electronic transmission, and it is shifting okay, so I don't think it's that, but we can check fuse 17, which is the one over in the corner. And if it's not fuse 17, I mean, that's kind of it. So let's check 17. Oh, here's 17. It's perfectly fine. So this is not a blown fuse problem. This is a something in the wiring has gone funky problem. Could very well be that when they tapped for the two switches that they tapped in, that they tapped something, moved something, and now we're here where we are and it's not working. So I'll leave that for whoever the next owner is going to be. You've got two working switches. You're just going to have to decide whether or not you want to dive in the wiring to fix that. I gotta say, I've seen plenty of random stuff, but this is a pencil that has to be excavated. That's impressive. But as you can see, I went ahead and I lifted that up because I realized there really wasn't much anything holding it. This truck may have begun life with carpet and then they came in and put vinyl in, but then again, these pads are here, so maybe it was a kit. I don't know. But I'm just blowing out as much dirt as I can, and then I'll do that bit of painting, and then I am done for this evening, and I'll come back to this tomorrow to hopefully get us to the point where we can show, we'll get it all wrapped up and throw it up on Facebook and set this thing up. All right, so get your position a little better. So I've gone through this. You'll notice it revealed some more rust that was underneath, and also over here where it had gotten kind of bad, it revealed a couple of pinholes here. So this floor pan is still okay. It's not going to fail anytime soon. But if I hadn't gotten to it when I did, within the next couple of years, this would have gotten really thin and then just blown out. This particular generation of F-body, if the windows don't seal and you start getting moisture, all along here just rots. So that's what's up with my brother's truck. It's all rotted. It's all gone along the rocker. The rocker itself is okay, but all this sheet metal here is just toast. Anyway, so what I'm going to do now is, if you've never painted before, don't listen to me. I'm not a painter, but I can tell you that the key to paint, as far as for whatever painting I've done, is prep and having a clean surface that you apply the paint to. So we're going to get the air gun again. I'm going to spray this out. I can go ahead and do that. So kind of do this. Oh, don't want to lose those. All right, now that we've gotten that out of the way, I will probably broom over those areas real quick. Catch anything the air missed. Particularly, this is off camera, but back right around the buckle mount. It's another kind of bad spot, so it's kind of brooming that clean. All right. And now that we've done that, now we can finally paint. So let me go get that paint, get that ready. And I'll go ahead and tell you guys beforehand, I'm not a painter. I'm not an artist. This will get covered. It will slow down the rust. But it's probably going to be ugly as sin. That's all right, because we can hide our sins, because all of this goes under the flooring of the truck. All right, today's product is going to be something I actually have used in the past, so I do know kind of how it works. Is this Rust-Oleum rust reformer. It actually works pretty well. I have a trailer that I haven't really mentioned it on the channel because I haven't started rebuilding it yet, but completely rusted out. Well, covered in rust, steel's still good. But I used a finishing tool, and then I sprayed this rust reformer on it, and I've let it sit for about a year to see how it holds up. And except for one spot where I did not clean enough surface rust, I only put down one coat, and you're supposed to put down two, and it looks really good. And it's just been sitting open in the weather, so it survived multiple tropical systems, all sorts of rain, severe thunderstorms, heat, humidity, and the paint's still sticking on there really well. So I can say I've got some real world testing here, and this stuff does work. So all that being said, we're just gonna spray the rusty spots, the particularly egregious ones. And the thing you're hearing, if you've ever wondered, that little plastic ball that's inside of these cans is called a glacket. That is your useless information for the day. And as you know, it is to mix up the paint inside so it'll apply evenly. So get that all glacketized. And then when you paint, you go in lines like this. Like I said, I'm not a painter, but being a homeowner, I have done, let me point the camera again, done enough stuff around the house that I have a semblance of what you're supposed to do. Come on. There we go. So, as you can see, right, it's kind of hard to see because it's still in the way, but right around here was another spot. So I'm going to take care of that right quick. Now this is definitely, you could say, whoops, yeah, I didn't mix it proper. You could say this is a little bit of extra work for trying to flip this truck, but I'm of a mind that this doesn't cost me anything, and it'll make it so if this is somebody's first truck, you know, they'll have a truck they can enjoy for several years without problems. This is somebody's weekend warrior truck, same kind of deal. They can just hop in it and go, and they don't have to worry about stepping in their truck one day and their foot going through the floor. You know, there we go. Now how this paint works is you put down one coat, let that coat dry for X period of time, and then throw down another coat. That's exactly what we're going to do. Blah 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 blah. Dry and recoat times allow. Oh, okay. So you gotta wait a day. Darn, I should have done this last night. But I seem to remember I let it dry enough to kind of get tacky, and then I just hit it again, though it says to do it every 24 hours. Eh. Anywho's, I'm going to repeat this on the other side. There's some spots. It's not as bad on the passenger side, but there's some spots over there. I'm going to go ahead and do that, and then I guess, well, actually, I got to go to the junkyard today. I got to get that seatbelt, and then I'll tackle door hinges when I get back. Okay, so I just got back from the junkyard. This has had some time to dry, and it is dry to the touch. So I'm pretty happy with this. I'm going to go ahead and put the floor back in and just try to get the inside rebuilt. So floor back in, and then I've got a seat belt now to replace the one that was busted over there. So we're going to put that in, rebuild the trim, get the bench back in, all that stuff back in, and then I need to do these door hinges. So as a reminder, when we start putting our seatbelt assembly back in, it can only go one way. There's a keeper and then our bolt. We want it tight. We want to make sure that it's not going anywhere, because in a crash, this is what's supposed to be holding you from going flying through the windshield, right? So make that tight. It appears to be working. This is good. So what we can go ahead and do before we drop in any trim pieces or anything is we need to go ahead and put our anchor in. So again, that was another, should be a pretty distinctive bolt, because as you can see, this one's pretty boogered up. But honestly, all the ones I found at the junkyard were exactly the same way. And this one I know works, so I'm just going to stick with it. But I'm going to get this back in. And then remember, we actually have to feed this through a hole in the B-pillar trim. In case you didn't know, this part here, this is called the B-pillar. This is the A-pillar, and on longer passenger vehicles you have a C-pillar. But we have to, for this piece of trim that goes here, we have to feed the belt through to make sure everything goes in. And also remember, we've got about 11 bazillion little screws we got to put in on both sides to rebuild everything, because I took everything apart to paint and to clean up and all that. So oh nice, we got daylight there. I guess I need to put a little bit of caulk or something right there. Yeah, I'm gonna put some RTV right there. Plug those holes to keep water from coming in there. And we'll keep moving. As you can see, this wasn't a full vinyl cover. This was only the feet area. The bench was not included. So you'll know you have this, or you're pretty close to it, when you can take a look at your screw holes, and they pretty much line up with the holes that are in the sheet metal. So the good news here, at least, is if you get it mostly right, it'll make itself the rest of the way right, which is good. Alright, so when you're getting this trim back on, the support up here goes outside. Actually, I got that fuzzy thing in the wrong place. It goes right there, but it goes outside of the trim. The back, not the front, but the back belt gets fed through this little T here. So it winds up looking like that when it's correct. And then you put the little plastic cover on top after everything's tight, and that gets this back in, and this needed to go back in first because then you have to lay your sill panel on top, and this gets hidden under the sill panel, and I think this gets hidden under the sill panel as well, so you got to do that. Also, in my case, I took out the window seal, the door seal, so got to put that back in as well. Just a whole bunch of little bits that got to go back together to make this work, but I'm just going to keep trying. So the good thing about door seal is that it's press on, press off. The two pieces are going to meet at the bottom of the door in the middle. So based on that and based on the direction, you want the rounded part facing out, the flat side facing in. You can kind of get a feel about where it needs to go, and it needs to be pushed onto this pinch weld, right? So you may have to move some trim pieces out of the way. You may have to shove things around a little bit, which is why you got to get this in before you tighten all those pieces down. And as you push stuff in, you can adjust. So it looks like I have this wrong. Looks like it's supposed to kind of do something like this. Yeah, it's gonna want to come all the way off. I don't want to take it all the way off. I may have to take it all the way off. Yeah, I think I'm gonna take off a few more of these interior pieces. So that way I'm not fighting them. This is, 30-year-old plastic, so it can and will break on you. So instead of letting it, break, just get it out of the way so you can do what you got to do. All right. So if this is sitting like this, this would kind of do that. And it does grip with enough friction that you get enough of it pushed in, it'll mostly kind of stick. Get it pushed all the way in. Whereas this is fairly old door seal, so that's straight up miss. All right. So I've got it. It's not right, but it's close. So I can start trying to get the rest of this in. Now, one thing I do want to point out, take you out of the tripod here, is these two pieces are supposed to kind of thread into each other here at the bottom where they meet. So that this right here needs to go into here. So I'm going to fiddle with this because it's going to take some fiddling to get it right. But once everything kind of lays in like you think it should, these two should be about right there. So I have this about 4 or 5 inches off, and it'll lay correctly and nothing will be pulling or tugging because it is a formed door seal. It's not just flat. It actually is set to a specific shape. So if you have it too far off, it won't fit right. For example, like right here. So I'm going to fight with this. Just want to give you an idea of how to get it started. And then I'll bring you back after I get some trim pieces back on. Hey folks, just wanted to show you some progress. Remember when you're putting this guy back in, that there is a screw hidden behind the speaker box. Speaker enclosure right there. And it took some fiddling. It always does when things come to the floor, but I've got all this back in. I've got the door sill back in, door seal. So all of that's looking really good. I'm going to get the speaker back in. This side will be done. Repeat that over there. And then it'll be time to put the bench back in. So kind of exciting. All right, I've got the driver stuff back together. Ran out of screws that were usable, so I switched to self-tappers. If you're wondering why there's no screw in here, that's because one of the metal got a little thin here, and where this hole was opened up a bit, so it's not going to bite. You would need a bolt with a nut at this point, which I don't have. At least I'd have to go scrounge and trying to get this thing mostly back together. But otherwise, it is back together. All the trim is in at this point. So if you ever have to do this, give yourself a round of applause, because anything involving lining up on the floor is always a giant pain in the butt, and I detest it, but you got to do what you got to do. So at this point, I'm going to clean my tools out. I'm going to get some help from my brother, and we're going to get this bench in. We're going to bolt it down, clean it up, and then get all the belts through. And we should be pretty close to done with the inside of the truck, except for little tiny odds and ends that I may be fixing over the next week or so. We'll be left with the license plate lights and the door hinges.
Now you're gonna have to either crawl back in there.
No. Okay, hang on. Oh,
Close-ish. Seatbelts.
I want to clean the bench first.
Okay.
All right, so see these posts here?
Yep.
That's where the feet need to be. So you'll lift up your...
You ready?
Yeah. That was fun. Let me get it locked down, and then we'll test out the slide and the tilt, and I'll clean this up.
It should be good.
Feed the belts through. Yeah, look at that. Fix that passenger belt. So this doodle flopper disappeared.
Little cap.
Yeah, it's around somewhere. Anyway,
See if Ty's got one.
that's in. We just got to close her up. And the bench is back in. Remember, up front, you've got a pair of 15mm bolts. And then in the back, let me slide this forward here. Try to slide this forward. I don't have enough hands. In the back, see if you can see it from here. Yeah, I can't quite see it. But you've got 15mm nut you got to put back on. So one of the issues that was going on with the bench that we did the repair on with the broken spring was that when you slid the bench up and down, this side wouldn't lock. As you can see, it is now locking. So that's a good repair. And I'm gonna wipe this bench down It was kind of grody before it just sat outside for a day and got covered in crap. So I'm going to wipe it down. And then we're going to move on to the door hinges. It's really coming together. It looks a whole lot better. It looks like a truck again. Gotta say, it's nice. I've been going at this for a solid 2 days to get all this together. So it occurred to me that I never actually looked in the glove box. So I cleaned it out a bit, but I found a halogen bulb, some sort of a marking pin, another marking pin, some sort of marking chalk. They have the kind of hitch ball where you can take the cap off basically and put a bigger one on. So this is the other one, the 1 7/8. Got in there. But I thought this was pretty neat. This is the original 96 owner's guide and initial warranty information and all that other good stuff. Still here. Almost 30 years later. So that's going to go back in its original baggie. That'll go back in here for whoever winds up buying this. So with that, the bench is now clean. I'm going to run belts through it. We'll keep on moving. Man, it looks so much better in here than when I got it. Okay guys, I'm going to make the how-to tomorrow because I'm running out of daylight. I'm kind of pooped out, been at it all day. Check this out. This door, you couldn't close it without hip checking it, and when you did, you had a visible gap up here, and that's why water kept getting in. But I have replaced striker, and I redid the bushings and pins, and that helped some, but I think the hinges have actually gotten a little wallowed out. But now if you close it decently, see the lining? It's pretty much bang on, which means that up here, this should now seal. So the theory would be that at least this should keep rainwater out. You go through a car wash, it may still sneak in, but because of old seals, but this should at least keep rainwater out. And I will show you how I did all that tomorrow. Good evening, everyone. Today is a new day. So one thing I noticed when I came over here to do the pins on the passenger door is they've never been removed. These are the original stock pins. You see how they're still painted white? When I worked it on the driver's side, someone had already put in an aftermarket repair kit. So that's the second repair kit it's had. Kind of makes sense. This was a work truck and mainly you had drivers getting in and out. That being said, if I reef on this door a little bit, the pins are loose. And even when you close the door, closes pretty easy, right? Panel lines mostly line up. But then come over here. See that? I don't know how well it shows up on the camera, but I can see air coming in through here. So the door itself is not sitting up where it needs to sit. So we have a gap in the weather seal, which is why water keeps getting in along here where I had to do the painting. And if this is not fixed, that's going to rot out. So there's two things I'm going to do. First thing I want to try is just replacing this striker. You can see this one has gotten pretty chewy. So I can replace this, and that can be a temporary solution to where it might raise the door up just enough to fix the problem. But the longer term solution is you got to get those pins out. But with the tools I have, that means taking the door off. And since I can't take the hinges out, that means unbolting these bolts here, 1, 2, and then there's another 2 down there, 3 and 4, to literally take the door off. And then that will give me a whole lot better access with a drill, because Ford, in their infinite wisdom, it's gonna be kind of hard to show you, but see, yeah, just kind of make it out. They riveted this in. So there's a rivet you got to drill through before you can even get the pin out. And I can't get a drill bit in there as is. So the door needs to come off so I can actually get access to that. So I'm going to try the striker first, and I'm going to see how that looks. And maybe if I got the time, I'll go ahead and do the door pins anyway, because I'm a glutton for punishment. So that is our striker. That is a T50. So you see Ford kind of loves T50s on these big obnoxious things. Oh yeah. So not particularly hard to get this one out. It's just a bolt with a very large plastic collar, basically. And I have, this is a Dorman replacement. I can go get that number for you in a minute. But it goes in exactly the same way. Saw the other one come out, and it does have this retaining washer to make sure the bolt doesn't fall through on you. Let's see if I can get it to bite. Alright, it feels like something's kind of floating in there, but let's go ahead and get this adjusted. We'll kind of get it more tight, and then we'll adjust it. Oh, can't have that. Should be about right there. Just kind of eyeballing it. Okay. So, see, we got a new plastic bushing here to replace this one that has gotten mangled after, 320,000 miles. So let's see what that does for the door. I'm gonna adjust you guys slightly. Getting you clear of the swing line. And let's see what we get. I'm gonna zoom you in. And here we go. Okay, so when we look here, we're still drooping, and now the door, had to really kind of put my hip into it, get it to close. And that's interesting, but to get it to close properly, I had to pull in further in the frame. I suspect, particularly based on that, this door got canoodled a little bit and it affected the line. If we zoom you back out, take a look up here again, we can see that really didn't really help our problem. We still have a lot of daylight right there, so the pins definitely got to be replaced. So let me get the setup going, and then we'll get the door unbolted. First thing that needs to happen is there is one single wire on the XL that runs in through this. That is the door speaker. So we have to disconnect that, which means the door card has to come back off. If you remember earlier in the video, we had to do this to replace our door handle. So there's a T15 right there, screw here, screw in here. I added a self-tapper up there. And then there's some that have been added along the bottom here. And then we lift up and then out. We'll get that off. then we'll get to the speaker. Alrighty, folks. So there is our speaker, and it turns out these are also T15s. There are 4 of them, and the speaker does have a magnet in it, so you don't have to worry about it falling out. It's just gonna sit there until you pry it out. It's actually interesting that bulk of the weather seal is still on this door. It's not something you often see on a vehicle this old, particularly if somebody's been in here and done work, which I'm pretty sure somebody has been. Let's get these out. I haven't heard anybody ask, but if you often wonder why I use hand tools so much, it's because often I'm working on things that I've never worked on before. So I don't know their condition, and I have been burned in the past by using a power tool and it breaking stuff. So alright, so this has one of the amazingly annoying Ford clips of this era. There we go. Okay, we have ourselves a speaker. And so we did all that so that you will kind of turn your attention to, bring you down a little bit. Right here, this umbilical. What you can do is just pull it out. And with that, you get this out of the door. So at this point, there is nothing in the door that's going to try to cause you pain and suffering. If you take out these, I don't know, maybe 3/8, 9/16 bolts in the door. I got to go figure out what they are, but that is what we are doing next. Actually, what we're doing next, I'm going to go ahead and show you. Before we do that, kind of bring you down, check it out. This is my Badlands. It's supposed to be an off-road vehicle jack, but it is amazing at stuff like this where you need a jack that can move in your yard quickly. And this thing is just outstanding for that particular role. And since it's got a rubber pad, I don't mind pushing it like that. So now that our door is supported, take a look. Door is supported. You don't want to crank it too much, but that way, whenever the bolts do come out, the whole door is just not going to go right. I'll have some control over it so that I can set it aside without something breaking. I also recommend that you go ahead, throw the crank back on real quick, and roll the window down. Just so that if the door does tumble out of control or something, there's not any glass for it to shatter on. So let me go figure out what that bolt is. All right, so that door striker from earlier, that is a Dorman 38448. And as to what we're currently working on, it turns out this is a 13 millimeter bolt. So I'm gonna get the rest of those out. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is a door. They are heavy. So if you need some help as you're working on that last bolt and you feel it starting to give, get some help. Or you can get another jack stand, which is a jack stand or another jack. Get it under the other side of the door. So I had it on the outside. You can get one over here on the inside. And then that way, the full weight of the door gets supported. You don't have to worry about it. Now, with that out of the way, I can actually show you a little bit better. Get you out of the tripod. I can show you a little better what I was talking about with the pins. So there is here, that is a rivet. It's going to need to be drilled out. And then kind of could be there. I can't see what you guys are seeing, but it should be right in there. So can't really, I'm going to try to swing these around a bit so that I can get good access, but I got to drill out from the bottom with metal cutting drill and do the thing. So I'm going to start working on doing the thing. Good afternoon, everyone. Today is a new day. So I said that I was going to talk about how you do door pins. I am not going to talk about how you do door pins because I'm terrible at it. I wound up having to steal parts off my brother's truck because I mangled it so badly. But I did learn a lot from that, so I will do a couple of pointers for you guys on things that you can play with and things to know. But I'm not really going to go into what I tried to do to replace the pin bushings and whatnot because I did a terrible job, I broke stuff, and I don't want to give you guys bad information. Alright, so start off with, this door was not right. When you looked at the seam line here, I mean, it's tight now, it was tighter before. And the door would close, but what was going on was when you looked up in here, you could see daylight. So the door wasn't closing enough for the seals to do their job, which is the reason why when you looked in here that it was getting wet and all the dirt packed in here and it was rusting. So this is what I did. This is what you need to know. See that pin there? That's not a Ford pin. This is an aftermarket thing you can get for like $8 at your local parts store. It is held in place with a little tiny E-clip so it won't slide out. And there are, in this part up here, there are these little, you can actually kind of see one right there. There are bushings that go in, and these bushings wear out over time, which causes your door to sag, which is generally what's causing your door problems. I tried to replace them, and I did a crap job. I wound up bending this piece of metal so much that the pin doesn't line up quite right anymore, so I can't use it. And down here, I got them both in into this, but I had something to hair off because when I tried to knock a pin through it, it just broke the bushing and knocked it out. So what you see here are the original Ford bushings from my brother's F250. He kindly allowed me to grab those parts. So all I did is I cut the original pins so that I could transplant the parts, and I did. And as you can see, the alignment stayed good, everything stayed good, the bushings are in okay shape, so it all worked out. But I did have to take this completely off, right? So that meant the door had to be adjusted. And what I learned is that there's quite a bit of adjustment in this piece. There is a plate there's 3 screws. You can get 3 bolts. You can get a better view from over here. At 2 of the bolts anyway. And they go into a plate, and that plate floats. So you can adjust it up, down, forward, and backward. And it is an enormous pain in the butt to put it all back together. But I put it all back together. And what I wound up with was that you would go to close this, it would do that. And it would not close all the way. And you would have to hip check it to even get it to shut, and then it was pushed in. The door was further in than the B-pillar. And that's when I learned that you can actually adjust this. This also floats. It can move up, down, forward, and backward. And I had adjusted it wrong. So I got in here and I tinkered with this, And so now you just close the door fairly normally. It closes and it will open again. So it's back to where it was before in that regard, but as I showed earlier, actually you can see it easier from this side. It's now sealing like it needs to. So that means all the work I did cleaning out the dirt channel and throwing down rust converting paint and all that good stuff, it'll actually mean something because now this door closes correctly. So all I can say is there are other more talented YouTubers out there that can show you how to actually remove the old bushings and put in the new bushings. I've got footage on that. Again, I'm not going to show it because it's horrible and terrible and it's going to cause you pain and suffering, so not doing that. But at least you now know the striker can float and can be adjusted. Your actual door hinges can float and be adjusted. Just be aware that everything is connected to everything. So if you loosen one thing, you may be in for more than you bargained for. Doors are tricky. I don't claim to be an expert, but I got this one good enough to do what I need it to do. So I will proceed with rebuilding it and finishing up the maintenance I'm doing on this truck before I sell it. So something else I noticed while I've been doing this whole door debacle is this was absolutely frozen solid, so you couldn't actually lock the wing window. It was frozen in an unlocked position. So I've just been taking some PB Blaster, getting it in there, and I just started working it back and forth after I put some locking pliers on it. As you can see, it's almost where I want it. It's not quite butter yet, but it's getting there. You can also look on the PB trails on the door, and there's a lot of nastiness in it. So that is the rust breaking free and then dribbling down. It's the little things, right? This is a free repair. Doesn't cost me anything to do this, but it's worth something when someone's going down the road and maybe it's a day like today, it's a fall day. They don't want to turn the AC on. They just want to turn their wing window, get that airflow going, enjoy the weather. There we go. It's getting really loose. I like that. So something like this, guys, part of the reason I'm doing this entire video, and it's a long one, it's probably going to be a multi-part, is to show that as long as you buy something that isn't completely clapped out, just put a little bit of money into it and a lot of elbow grease, and you can get something decent out of it. And yeah, I've had a donor truck which let me get a couple of parts, but by and large, everything I have fixed on this truck has been just, I had stuff laying around. It wasn't vehicle specific, just stuff hanging around in the shop. And having the knowledge and the elbow grease to work on it. So I'm going to wrap this up. I might have to do this the other side. I haven't checked it yet. But this is moving pretty nicely now. So it should be good to go. So while I was waiting for the paint to dry, I decided to check out the license plate lights. I didn't see them lighting up, so I started disassembling them. And it turns out it's all friction grip. And this one was shattered. And as you can see, it's a little bit rusty in there. The actual contact looks okay. But this uses a Type 97 bulb, which I haven't seen used in a very long time. But that's what it uses. So I'm probably going to break $200, but I'm going to have to go get some Type 97 bulbs because license plate light, it's not really a safety feature, but it's also a dumb reason to get pulled over. So I'm going to try to get this one apart. But basically what those fingers do, these outer ones, these are the friction grip to hold you in your bumper. And then there's another set of fingers on the bulb socket itself. That's what holds the bulb socket to the dome part that actually allows the light to come through. So, and no one has messed with this in an extremely long time. And this was all kind of rusted together. So we'll see how this one comes apart, but it's not working either. All right, so finally I got the second one loose, and as you can see, yeah, nobody's touched this in a very long time. I had to spray PB in there, and I had to destroy the bulb and just get a pick in there, but I finally got it out. The actual contact looks okay, but I got to spray all this out and try to clean this up so that we can actually put new bulbs in it and it work. Good afternoon, everyone. Today is a new day, and hopefully today is the day where I finish out all the maintenance, give this truck a wash, and put it up for sale so that maybe one of you guys wind up buying this thing. So the last major thing that needs to be worked on is the license plate lights or the tag lights. So they had already done a custom job here. So this is I guess I'll show you the whole assembly here. I'll show you the one that I kind of did my pathfinding on. So this is what it looks like. My camera will focus. There we go. That's what it looks like plugged into your bumper. And what's supposed to happen is that you pop this out of the bumper, and then you wiggle this loose, and there's a bulb inside. And then you can twist the bulb, get it out. Now what really, I'm going to tilt you guys down slightly. That's a little better. So the way I found it though, it was all completely rusted together. So I had to destructively get this bulb out, and it was just a mess. And I had to kind of figure out how this works. Now you'll notice something interesting here. There's only one wire coming from this light, right? So how does that work, you say? Camera will behave. We'll just do this. How does that work? Basic electric theory says you got to have a full circle, right? A full circuit for electricity to flow. It needs a ground and it needs some sort of a hot, right? So how this works, if you take a look at the inside, actually that's fine, I can extend the contact up. It only has a single contact, and how this all works is it grounds itself to the case, is what the bulb does. It's hard to tell, but if you look at this bulb right there, that blob, it's because I ran a wire to the case. So the ground runs to the case, and then when you put the bulb in, like so, oh, there it is, and lock it in position, now it grounds itself through this case. This gets plugged into your bumper where it is grounded out against the truck. So the electricity has a path back to the battery, and the light works. That's how these work, which means it's really important that the inside of this case and the outside of this case are clean, as it is important that where it mounts into the bumper is clean. Otherwise, it doesn't have a path to ground, and your light either will not work well or it won't work at all. So this thing that is dropped with these somewhat expensive bulbs, fortunately nothing broke. Yay. Chip the bulb a little bit, that's all right. When I took them out, looked like this. This one I haven't worked on yet, so I could show you what I found out. and it was really hard to get out. So we are going to clean this up inside and out. And this one I already worked on. This I don't think is important, but I've already cleaned quite a bit of rust out of the inside of this housing here. And then this is what it looked like originally. I really need to get a better camera. So, okay. All the blabbing out of the way, I'm going to show you what it is. First thing that needs to happen is pop the wire out, which this is not actually as hard as it sounds. It wants to come out, it just kind of sits there. Just kind of pull it out. Dun dun. There you go. So now you just have the housing. Then we're gonna move on over to my bench vise. And honestly, with the amount of corrosion on this, the bench vise just helps to hold everything in position, but you don't need a bench vise. It just helps. And then I've got this cheap set, but I've got this set of steel brushes that you can put in a drill. You just start going up and down, working your way around. And I don't know if the camera's picking it up, but it is. Zoom in for you. But it is kicking up quite a bit of dust. Or rust flakes, I should say. So it's important so the bulb can ground out that we get this as clean as we can. You could probably just use a regular wire brush, a little Dremel tool, something. You just got to get this cleaned out. So, first pass, still work to do, but you can see it's already cleaned up quite a bit. So I'm going to do this, get the inside clean, then I'll show you the next step. All right, so inside's cleaned out. Now let's work on the outside. Again, you could hold this in your hand. It's just a little bit more annoying. So take it, hold it, and then just run your brush. Whatever your cleaning tool is. In this case, the rust isn't that bad. Holy cow, this thing's shedding like mad. Talk about cheap. That's it's impressive. It's very impressive. So perhaps one of the things on your list is not to buy really cheap brushes. I bought this kit years ago. I'm not even sure where I got it from. This is already about the fourth brush. And again, our goal was just to get as much of the junk as we can off the outside so that we can still get our ground. We're going to need it. Just kind of turn it. Get some more off of it. So the last bit where you're taking care of the kind of the cup section at the top, you'll need to hold it in your hand unless you've got better tooling than I do. But at least with a steel brush, this comes right up. which is good. And you'll see right here, this is the channel that the bulb slides into and locks. So you want to try to get that more or less clean on the inside, which I have, so yay. But last bit, just hold it in your hand. Try to get right up in that saucer section. Up in the cup. We're not going for perfect here, we're just going for good enough. If we're going for perfect, I might put this in some sort of an acid bath or, you know, something like that, but it's not what I'm kind of aiming for here. All right, so then I've got a little air over here. Kind of air it off. There we go. So now this piece is, you know, more or less clean. What we can also do, which I showed you earlier, I don't know if it's really going to matter, but we can take the saucer, work on the inside lip of it as well. I mean, best I can tell, these sat here and then they worked until they didn't, and then nobody bothered to fix them. I think in '97 they changed to the much newer style of license plate light, where it's a 2-wire, it's a standard connector, and it's not a production to clean it up or anything like that. Yeah, if something burns out on you, you just change the bulb and go about your day. You don't have to worry so much about continuity and all those pesky things. So I'm going to put a little more work into this. I'll bring you back for the next step. So the last thing that needs to happen is some of these fingers could be bent out of shape. As far as getting back in here, so you kind of just take a look, see if there's a finger that's in your way. And I just happen to have these pliers laying around. Just bend these fingers in just a hair. Don't want to bend them in too much because then you don't have a friction grip. So just a little bit. And then see if that's enough to let you get your case in. This one's pretty close. Which one of you stinkers is the one sticking out too far? So anyway, just lots of kind of tedious small things. To get this back together. Once you get this figured out, oh, yeah, it's close. Yeah, I actually probably need to squish that something in a little bit more because it really doesn't want to close. Anyway, I'm going to tweak this, and I got to remember, you got to put your bulb and your contact back in, because in the next step, we got to go clean the bumper, and then we got to get under it. Make sure that this is wired up the way I think it's wired up, so that I can make repairs and get this thing working. Okay guys, we are under the truck, and here is the situation. When I first got this thing, there was a connector that fed these together in a double, and then it went out into some spade terminals, which, as you saw earlier, they went to the tag lights. So I did some investigating with my meter, and what I found is that this is hot. If you touch a ground over here, you get 12 volts off this guy. So what they were doing was running these lights in series. So power would go in, or power would flow to both lights. The lights are then grounded by their cases into the bumper. Bumper's tied to the frame. Frame, is grounded to the earth. And that's how that worked. So what they did is these were bullet connectors, which are the kind of bullet shaped connectors you see. You know what they did? It was it's two of these. This guy. Smaller version of that. And they had shoved those into a barrel and done a homemade crimp, and it fell out. Besides the fact that, the lights were rotted and everything. So what I am doing is essentially they were using one crimp to feed this into the lights to complete a circuit and get the lights to power up and everything. So that's literally what I'm going to do. I'm going to strip these wires, feed them into a butt splice. I have extended both of the taillights with some wire I have available, which this is a bit thicker and heavier than it needs to be, but it works. It's mechanically crimped and sound. And I'm just gonna get a nice big crimp going on here, two going in. And that's essentially what they had. And that's what we're gonna have. The difference is that mine's not gonna fall to pieces. And it's also not, technically it will not be serviceable unless you cut the crimp, and then you can get it the tail lights, or the tag lights. I think this will hold for quite some time, probably for the rest of the life of this truck. So that's what we're going to do. And I said this before, but this truck is solid. Not a lick of rust on it that's worth talking about. It is just solid all the way. Both fuel tanks still work. A selector valve switch Montgomery still works. There's actually more in the rear tank than the front tank, and the brakes were serviced at some point recently because they're fantastic. Someone's got these drums dialed in, and the discs are great. So, man. So that's the original leaf springs on it. Even the fuel filler neck looks good. Because it was a fleet truck, they actually took care of the things they had to take care of. They let a lot of small stuff slide, and that's why I've sunk, about 3, 4, I don't know, let's do an hour. So I probably sunk about 40 hours into fixing this thing up. Not spend a lot of money, it's just been a lot of stuff like this. And they homebrewed their trailer. They made their own ground for it. That's what this is. So I suspect this works as well. Anyway, I'm going to get this done so I can test the lights. Okay, folks, let me explain what I found out, because this got weird. So you probably see this new wire, right? This is the ground that I built for our tag light. And it goes to the tag light, and I have it attached in a very rednecky way. But as I can't solder, that's the only thing I could think of that will let me get a working ground, because this is what I found out. I am right in how this works. The case grounds out against, it's supposed to ground out against the bumper. And then everything works. You get a circuit, you have a path to ground. But for whatever reason, no matter how much I clean up that assembly, or how much I adjust the finger so it has a tight fit, won't work. The only way it will ground, let me show you on the other one. The only way I can get it to achieve ground and then actually light up, here it is you see that bulge right there? That's where the actual contact on the bulb goes into the casing. Is I have to touch that bulge to a ground. So in this case, I've been grounding it out against the hitch frame, which in turn is tied to the truck frame. So path to ground, all that. You do that, grounds perfectly, lights right up. So that's why I came up with that, because I couldn't get it to ground any other way. But now that it grounds, if I touch it against this, which this is, I'm making do with the redneckiness that I inherited here. This is hot. So they intercepted this wire, they cut it. This end of it's hot from the battery. This side is not. So now if I touch this guy, which is from the bulb, to that, because it's properly grounded, lights right up. No problem at all. So what I'm going to do now is repeat that process, run, I don't know if I'll run a bolt-in, like a self-tapper over there, or what I may do, I think what I will do is just run a long wire over here. I've still got room on this ground they already built I'll put another ring terminal on there. I'll do that. And then I will take the two hot wires off the back of the lights and I will connect them up into this guy. And then in theory, when you pull out to position 1 on the lights in the cab, everything should light up and no fuses should pop, because I tried this and how I originally configured it, and because we had poor grounds or no grounds, pulled the fuse and it's a 15 amp fuse and it went pop and she was no more. So that's what we're doing. That's what I found out. It does indeed ground through the case, but it's real picky about where it does it. So, and ta-da! There we go. They work. We're not popping fuses. We have light, which is good. Like I said, this is a very, very janky way to do this. It should be okay as long as you're down here in North Florida. If you were to head up into the Rust Belt at all, this would fail. This should be soldered really, and then something put over it, dielectric grease, put inside of a boot, heat shrunk boot, to keep it from getting exposed. But this is what I have to work with, so there you go. All right, I'm going to put this up. I'm going to try to clean up my wiring a little bit, and then finally, at long last, we are done with this truck. It is done, done, done. Time to give it a bath, take some pictures, and put it up for sale. Alrighty guys, so went ahead, just drove it, got it up the temp, no check engines lights, shift's great, shift indicator's working great, everything's perfect. All that hard work paid off. So the very last thing we need to do is give her a bath. So I'm gonna rustle up over some rags and then a bucket, and I'm gonna, soap her down and then hit her with the pressure washer, and that's it. It's good. All right, folks, this is our end result after me washing and cleaning windows, scrubbing tires and hubcaps. The result of 40 plus hours of wiring and swearing and scraping of knuckles and troubleshooting and diagging. And overall, I think this turned out really, really well, considering that we are less than $250 in it, other than the purchase price, of course. Definitely had some help because I had a parts truck of sorts. So that let me, put in a better cluster bezel and this trim piece right here, and a couple other things. But all the really, truly expensive stuff, I bought it and we stayed under $250 with it. But yeah, we got all that fixed. See that? The radio's been behaving. All of our lights work, and there's our license plate, our tag lights in action. Looking good. Our doors close okay. The driver's door closes perfect. Passenger door, you got to put a little bit of oomph behind, but it closes up. It doesn't leak really. Driver's door, I think, would leak in a car wash, but I think you'll be all right for driving around in the rain and whatnot. Yeah. This thing cleaned up pretty dang good for what for the purchase price and the money I put in it. So tonight I'm going to get the photos together. I'm going to go ahead and put it up on Facebook Marketplace. The price will be $3,000. And then I'm going to work on editing this video, and I'll put it up in parts. Probably. I may do one big one. It's going to put me behind on videos. That's all right. I want to try out a big one. So that's it. All right, everybody. That's the end of the episode. So if this really long episode entertained, educated, or if you enjoyed, please consider liking, sharing, and subscribing, telling all your friends. That helps to grow this channel so I can bring you more content like this. And also, please leave a comment. I like to read them, I like to learn from them, and I like to reply to them. And as always, guys, as we did see in this video, I do make mistakes. Please learn from them. I make them so you don't have to. All right, guys, I will see you next episode.